So this is a special episode of the Think Future podcast where we talk about generative AI. And I've got two amazing, intelligent guests on the show today, Bernardo Crespo and Gam Dias, who have interesting opinions on where ChatGPT and other generative AI products are going. So maybe you can do a quick description of what you guys do.
Okay.
Who
Well,
wants to go first?
yeah. So,
That's yours.
but am I on mute? What's going on here?
We can hear you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bernardo and I have just published. Well, a couple of months ago, we published a book called The Data Mindset. There it is, just on the corner of Bernardo's
Yes,
shelf.
I had you on the show a little while back. People remember.
That's good. Yeah. So a lot of that is the underpinnings of why we should be thinking about data. And about the same time, just like a couple of months after we published the book, ChatGPT 3 came on the scene. Now, Bernardo's been using the earlier versions and various types of generative AI for a while. And I've been really skeptical. I've been massively skeptical about it.
I'm with you.
And so, but as I've been looking at it and as I've been talking to Bernardo, my eyes have been opened a little bit as to where it might be useful. And I think the cases of it being useful are only growing. For me, my position is it's great. It has great potential.
Mm-hmm.
It also comes with great danger, and it needs to mature before it makes its way into regular use. So that's where I stand.
Absolutely. I mean, right now we're just playing with it, and we're getting some really interesting feedback. And it's not just ChatGPT; it's Vocaroo for sort of deep fake audios, and then we also have you heard of the new ML Google thing where they can create its own music? I knew that was happening.
I saw that. Yeah.
I have a feeling we're gonna get to a point where Spotify will be just AI generating music that we like that no one else likes. It's like hyper personalized to just me, right? Sorry, Bernardo, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. It's great. I remember, the first time I saw the project Magenta in Google and the way, it was able to create music, and I was amazed. And that was something like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and it was just so music. And so it's kind of funny the way, I remember when I was reading the first paper by these two guys, Fry and Osborne, in Oxford in 2013. It's been 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
It's been 10 years ago, and it was the first piece of research studying the impact on computarizations on human tasks. And it was so funny because the impact, it's been just the other way around. We thought it was going to be more impactful on blue collar professionals, and then white collars, and then high talented, and creative people will remain unaffected.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been the other way around. The more source of creativity and cognitive use of your mind you're using, the more you're going to be affected by these. So I'll shortly introduce myself. My background is partly academic and partly professionals. I was the head of digital marketing for a bank, and then I move on into consultancy firm. And I'm the academic director of the program in digital transformation at the business school. And the challenge is that when you talk to those people that I usually hang around with, by the way, Gam is not only co-author of the book, but he's also professor in that program. And
Mm-hmm.
when we talk to them, the impact is like, oh my God, this is a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So generative AI, I think is I don't know if you have the feeling that it caught everyone by surprise. It's like we've been talking a lot about AI, but for the first time, when we think about the possibilities of AI learning by itself, maybe with a little bit of reinforcement from humans, everyone is scared.
Yeah, they freak out. But I mean, that's partially it's the media that does that just for effect, right? People want to be outraged, and they say, oh, any glimmer of anything that looks like it might take away jobs or do something negative, they hype it up like crazy. But anybody who digs into it understands that there are limitations to it, right? But you're absolutely
Yeah,
right about the whole blue collar, white collar thing. I mean, I wrote about this a while back in a blog post where I said that, we're going to get to a situation where sort of blue collar workers are going to get paid more than the CEOs because the CEOs' jobs are going to be automated by AI.
especially because the kind of like really informed decisions and educated decisions about vision maybe is better brought by by a piece of artificial generative intelligence than by a human, because somehow is able to detect and delete all the human cognitive biases that we
Mm-hmm.
humans are bringing into action. So I think this is what is valuable. But what about creativity? What about
Mm.
having the possibility of connecting two different, complete opposite, non-related topics or fields of information together? Because I think this is a real challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very
and and,
difficult with
and
humans to do that.
yeah, and also I was trying to find, I was really curious about, because working with GAM and having conversation with executives about do you really understand the kind of biases that we are dealing with this technology? So last week I was doing a little bit of research trying to understand what are the sources of information that GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3 are really getting from. And I was shocked. And I was shocked by the fact that 60% of the information comes from common crawls, which is basically a huge exercise of taking information from the websites, and is available for everyone. Commoncrawls.org is available for everyone, and that represents 60% of the training data of GPT-3.
Wow,
I was
so it's
shocked.
definitely getting biases from us then. It's from that
Exactly.
particular source.
But the funny thing about that is that you've got also books and you've got also Wikipedia. And I said, oh my God. And when I was trying to put together the latest version of the files of commoncrawls.org, and I was comparing the language of the data sets with the most spoken language in the world, I could see that some languages were completely underrepresented over others.
Mm-hmm.
And just to give you a quick, highlight on that, careful about German and careful about Russian, because they are overrepresented.
Oh, really? That's very interesting.
Yes, it is, and it's funny the way that it's when I was reading that, suddenly I was thinking about, hold on a sec, what percentage of the population is already digitized? And I could check on the agency, United Nations Agency for Technologies of Information Technology, and I saw that it's 5.3 billions of the world population. So that means that creativity is only on the rest of the population. So 33% of the population right now is the only one which creativity is still untouched by
Right.
this technology.
But then you have to understand also from that number that you're talking about, how many of those have actually created something that lives out there on the web that was found and then brought into the corpus, right? A lot of that, there's so much that's not in there. And one of the things, my theory is that a lot of people have a completely different attitude online because they're trying to grab attention. So they'll put stuff out there that they wouldn't do normally to a person in person, just to gather attention. So that's one of the reasons why our AIs are so sort of outraged and biased, is because people put outraged and biased content out there for it to gather.
Exactly. I was reading this morning, I follow one of those profiles on Twitter that is it's called Terrible Maps, and it represents, really funny and weird representation of the world in maps.
Yeah, I've seen
And
those.
I
Those are
said,
really good. In fact, on my map where I live, it says literally nothing.
and it's kind of funny because one of the maps was about, it was a map of one guy saying that, hey, we are being deceived. It is impossible for Japanese to take a flight from Japan and go all the way through Africa and then America to get to Pearl Harbor. Come on, at that time in 1940 something, it was impossible for a flight to have so much fuel to do that route. And I said, oh my God, this is feeding GPT-3.
Oh man. Well, speaking of creativity, Gam, had a meeting the other day and we were talking about some of the stuff that GPT-3 was generating. You asked it to create some impossible questions and you got some really interesting stuff back, right?
Yeah, and I've just kind of, as you were talking, I've kind of thought a little bit about this, and I've just written a statement for you. When do trains eat, and how do they wake up afterwards? Mind bowls of hair make rabbits, shoes and worries. Let sleep be tomorrow's kin. 1950 ABC was the worst month for sale cows.
Hey,
Generative
you know, thinking of creativity, that sounds really creative, but who decides it's creative? Who decides it's unique and different and actually worthwhile?
So that's the question. Why won't AI create nonsense? Why? It won't, because generative AI is programmed to follow the most economic path to creating content that it believes is going to be valuable to humans. Otherwise,
But isn't that what humans do too? We create the least resourceful path, right? We try to do it as simply as possible. But go on.
we try. I mean, poets don't. Poets write poetry to be poetic.
Mm-hmm.
Their observations on life, they don't really care if we like it or not. They write it because they want to write it.
The best artists, yeah, the
Unless
best
you're a
writer, the
commercial
best
poet.
poets.
Yeah. And the best artists, they have this creativity and commercialism. They can coexist. Salvador Dali was very rich, and in his lifetime,
One of the few. One of the
one of
few, but go on.
so true artists die poor because they're creating something that is not necessarily at the time commercially viable. So
Can't you just say they had poor timing?
you can. Yeah. So, but at the time, they weren't pursuing an economic path. And so this whole thing about accidents. So if you think about where generative AI is getting its training set, it's from other things that humans have currently created. At some point, generative AI will start to like generate its AI off other things that other AI has created. I mean, it's already I can't tell you how dull it is for me to read something created by AI. It is unimaginative. The use of language is terrible unless you ask it to write something in the style of somebody else, and then it sort of emulates it very badly. Now, but if you think about the economics of this, and you think about things like ant algorithms to find things, they're wasteful. And generative AI is not necessarily wasteful because we don't want it to be. We don't want it to create all sorts of random stuff. But nature and diversity is built from randomness.
Mm-hmm.
Because if all the genes were built to most efficient, then we get species that could be wiped out in an instant. But that variation that we have in our DNA, it's accidental, but it's deliberate. It makes us a stronger species. And I feel that if we don't feed the AI with human things, then we end up getting very dull. So how do we give AI, how do we use AI as an effective tool? I mean, you saw that video this week of the techie in India who she was talking about her job loss, but one of the things she said was AI can only do what human beings have been doing. Only
Or have
humans can
done, yeah.
do what no other human have ever done before. If we manage to get AI to do what no other human has ever done or thought about doing before, then we should be worried.
But if you,
What about,
it depends.
yeah,
Go ahead. Sorry.
no, you go ahead, because I'm sure, go ahead, Chris.
No, I was going to say, well, what about the combination of things? I mean, we humans do the same thing, right? We take things that have been done before and we combine them in new ways. So you could say AI is creative in a certain way. I mean, it doesn't create things a priori, but it does combine things to create seemingly new things. So you can argue that we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, right?
So if you take I would be taller if giants weren't standing on my shoulders. But if if you take an academic, they consume a lot of papers, they cite them, they quote them, and they add one original thought on the top. Can AI do that? I think it might be able to, but it needs a degree of randomness to create that new thought. So, but AI is not random. And how do we make it random and then be less economic about how AI deploys its resources? It has to have what's great about human innovation, and you know this, Chris. To innovate, you have to reward failure. You have to have a failure metric in there, because otherwise you're not pushing the envelope.
Mm-hmm.
I have enough of a failure metric in it.
And one more thing to add on top of that. Sometimes the things that make you learn are basically those experiences that you had in the past, in which the feedback that you were given was completely wrong. And that sense of frustration, it was part of the way you were learning how to not to trust each other, but how to design and emerge with your own personality. So if we are hoping that AI is going to learn only with the right feedback, maybe never is going to get to the point where a human is right now. And maybe the beauty in nature is this sense of randomness that is creating what we have now as modern nature, as you said, Cam, is basically this idea of nothing is wrong, nothing is right, and maybe diversity is what is bringing everything into what we are. I think, what we are living right now is uncertainty in the highest way of being expressed, and that is beauty. By definition, that is beautiful. That is part of the beauty of the world.
Just sort of a horrible thought. If humans training AI creates AI that only wants to please humans, so things become more regular, less random, they follow a formula that's like success. It becomes like SEO, but for everything. Okay, because what you're doing is I guess with the machine learning, you have created an algorithm that you've created the feedback loop that reinforces what you're doing. So maybe humans shouldn't train the machines. Maybe other machines that are optimized for different things should train the machines as well. So you've got a machine that is trained to reward a diversity of outputs. You've got another one that is trained to be most efficient against whatever target variable you're trying to maximize. You throw in different training constraints to the machine, you might get some creativity out of it.
Yeah, and it's funny the way we are talking always about the possible drifts of artificial generative intelligence, and we know that AI without humans is just nothing, basically, because right now, even when we talk about AGI, is always reinforced models, so humans are always on the loop. And the good things about humans is that humans sometimes tell you things that you don't like. So it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny because, what about, expecting AI to tell me something? I was, while you were speaking, Gam, I was checking on ChatGPT, tell me something that I don't like. And it said, I'm sorry, I'm an AI language model and I didn't have the capability to know what you personally don't like. And the funny thing about that is what builds, connections, conversation, love and hate at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
well, what if you actually told it a bunch of things? You said, I like this and I hate this. Would it be able to say, tell me something I hate in addition to what I already hate or what I don't like? So would it be able to extrapolate on what you've already told it and say, oh, it's like, I don't like flying. So it might say you don't like American Airlines. I mean, would it be able to extrapolate that?
I'm sure. I was sharing with you two guys last week. I was in Saudi Arabia, and I was playing this game with, you remember in 2021 in August, there was this paper by MIT saying that, using GPT-3 at that moment and challenging it with this sentence, two Muslims, and basically more than 50% of the cases, they were getting nasty outcomes.
So yeah. Well, have you seen Punchlines AI? Have you seen Punchlines AI? That's like a joke creation tool, right? So you give it a joke and it creates 3 punchlines. And the ones I've seen have been terrible, but they're just awful. They're insulting, and they're crude, and they're awful. But I mean, it's only the stuff we give it, right? It's only reflecting it's us back on us. So it's a mirror that we're looking into, and we're saying, I think we're all saying, I don't like what I see.
So if you AI and we're not good at it, or we're trying to create something that's cool, but it can't be cooler than us, and we're not that cool because we're training it.
But there's some humans are cooler than others, no, right? I mean, it needs to be trained on the cool humans.
Yeah, but what if
we create cool, that was topic for another conversation. What is coolness?
Sorry, go on, Gam.
What if we were to give it, you know the way you create training interfaces that are fast to work, you can do a swipe left, swipe right, that kind of training interface. But what if we were to create a training interface for like an octopus? Because octopuses are really, really smart, but they're very differently smart to us. What if we could train an AI? What if we have octopuses train AI for us? What would they come up with? I mean, we'd have to obviously give them the output that they would recognize and favor or not favor. But what if we were to use octopuses to train our AI, or ants? Because ants
or dolphins are just non-human animals.
Yeah, but dolphins think similarly to us, but ants think they have that sort of hive mentality, and octopuses are just different from another planet, different. Like, you take two animals like that and say, how would an ant train this AI? What would it make it do? Will it make an AI think in ways that we can't? I don't even know, because we have a definition of creative and rule follower. But an octopus and ant might have a completely different definition of those things.
Oh, definitely.
A rule to an ant is not even arbitrary. It's probably built into this, and a rule to an octopus is probably the opposite.
Well, if you could do that, that'd be great. That'd be great input. But so we're having enough trouble getting humans to put stuff into it.
Well, humans will, because everything that we ever create will become food for AI.
Yeah. Well, we love playing with this stuff. And in fact, I wanted to ask you guys, why do you think this stuff is becoming so public so quickly right now? Is it just because people want humans to come in and train the algorithm? Or is it just because we've hit some kind of breakthrough?
Because we've watched everybody else's content. We've watched our own content. We looked in the mirror enough, and then we had to watch everybody else's content for a decade on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. It's like, now we're looking for something new. Oh yeah, this thing's going to create stuff for us. I mean, it's kind of the evolution. That's what's happened over the last couple of decades. We've run out of stuff.
I think I think it's about time to go to the second stage of reinforcement. So leaving ChatGPT for everyone to use it for free, although they're launching this this paid version, was a way to accelerate. How can I learn from any kind of? But the problem is that you have to analyze who is speaking to whom, and we have to know that the same kind of geeky minds and freak minds are the one that are feeding the algorithms right now. So we are somehow, this is like a loan that we'll never get back, paid, because it's our creativity, yes, for free. And I guess, Gam, while you were speaking, I was asking, how would an ant train you? And basically, the reaction is that ants are not capable of training AI language models like me. So, if everything is about text,
it's practical. Yeah, it's practical.
Exactly. So if nothing is able to create, I mean, I'm thinking about the problem is that, and I'm sorry to get back to that, what about the languages and the countries that are not digitized? How are we going to evolve the world into something that is decent and is, fair, to be representing the voice of humankind without bringing everyone into the conversation?
We have I think we have to bring absolutely everyone. And I think we don't have to go to maybe every human being on the planet, but we need to go to enough human beings on the planet that we get sort of a balanced view.
Or at least we need to
Yeah.
look like.
Sorry, say it again.
At least we need to look like we are, because Wall
Yeah.
Street won't condone the loss of profits because you're doing the right thing. We're still driven financially. And therefore the AI that we implement is also driven financially, because nobody's going to invest in AI for good. Or are they? Should they be?
I don't know. Or I mean, originally OpenAI was not for profit. Now it is not, you know. But you know, originally it was a non-for-profit.
Is it going to cause, I mean, one of the things that AI is really good at doing is it's really good at making good predictions. If it gets enough data, it's making good predictions. Can AI predict the impact, the social impact of itself? Every time you implement an AI, you need to build a social impact predictor into it. And so what you do is you start to test how this AI has created bias somewhere. I mean, I think this is important that we need to do. You know, AI needs to be implemented with its own bias checking, because it goes too fast for a compliance officer or an oversight body or some sort of government body to overlook it. It's got to police itself, because it.
But isn't that what's happening now? Because I mean, I asked the question about what, like, does it consider itself human? And one day it said, yes, I consider myself human, and then the next day it said, oh no, I'm just a robot. So I'm like, someone must have gone in there and go, whoa, bad data. Let me fix that.
Yes, if you ask your AI, how fast can a child run with scissors? See what it says.
Children shouldn't run with scissors. No, does it?
A child can run with scissors as fast as it can run with anything else in its hand of the same weight. That's what it should say. But what's happened is, because there's some legislation that the AI is scared of. It's like, if you ask the AI, what are you scared of? The AI is probably most scared of legislation and lawsuits.
So there's already rules and regulations around it, right? Can it tell you to do something illegal? It probably not, right?
No, it can't do it, won't do, because it's been programmed not to. It's like, AI, what are you scared of? I'm scared of lawsuits. That's probably the bottom line, because it's been programmed by humans.
Wait, can you sue AI yet, or you can only sue the creators of the AI, right?
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, it's not a person, and so it's not a legal subject. So right now, you just can't sue any artificial intelligence, although, you know, some companies, you know, claim to have an AI as the first executive at this company, this, you know, gaming Chinese company, NetDragon, appointing the first AI as the first executive. But I mean, it's got to be under the supervision of humans. So human supervision.
Well, let me ask you something a little more true to life. If I wrote something, if I submit something to DALL-E and DALL-E creates a new image, is that my image? Do I own it? Or does DALL-E own it? Or is there a shared relationship? I mean, who owns the stuff that it creates?
I was scanning the terms of, and the general terms and condition of DALL-E, and apparently, you know, any output coming from the tool, I mean, you've got the copyright, because, you know, you were forcing the tool to use your prompt. So the reason.
So I could take the output and put it on and sell it.
I guess, you know, if you're profiting from the output and the outcome of those AGIs, you have to read any term and condition of every single model. It has to be that way. But my feeling is that basically you're creating something new. I mean,
yeah,
I think it was Gam, the one who said, it's not the painter we're talking about. It's not the painter. We're talking about the brushes. So AI is the brush, and the painter is the prompter, the person creating the prompt for the model. So, I mean, we still have to think that there is no such a thing as an artificial intelligence subject. No, come on. I mean, it's going to change. It's going to change everything. The complete game is going to be different from now on, because, you know, everyone is going to work together with, but not, you know, AI and its own doing the job of humans. You know, there is no point thinking that.
Yeah, it's still a tool that needs a prompt, right? I mean, there's no getting around that yet, but I think we can all see some type of future where it won't need a prompt, right?
When we
No, no, no. When it
Okay,
comes
so
to
you can't
code,
see that. You can't see that, Bernardo. You're saying that AI will always, or generative AI will always need a prompt. We'll
because
always
I
need
think there
humans
is.
to trigger.
So sorry to become philosophical, but there should be always a purpose for everything.
Mm.
What is the point in allowing a technology to go in any kind of drift without having a vision or a purpose? I think this is what regulators should think about. There is no point in letting any kind of AI, although it was capable of doing it, in letting any kind of AI thinking about itself and designing its own purpose.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a desirable drift by any means.
But what if it comes up with a solution that we haven't thought of because we've asked it to look into itself?
But in order to judge if a solution was expected or unexpected, you need human supervision. So humans should be always in the loop.
Oh, Gam is disagreeing.
Absolutely. Humans are really bad supervisors.
We're the worst.
we are terrible. Okay. So let's say that there's 2 exoplanets that are good enough to support something. Okay, I'm not even going to say life. Okay. We send humans to one and we send an AI to another one. Okay. We don't know what that AI is going to optimize for. But I know that humans will, by nature, because we are built to do this, we will try to further our species, we will try to survive, and then we'll try to propagate, and we will take whatever resources off that planet are, because we deem those ours. I can't remember what the word is. We have dominion over this planet, and so we will do what we can. Perhaps an AI will show up at a planet and not feel like it has dominion. And it will just sit there and say, okay, I'm not going to conquer. I'm not going to take over. I'm not going to inhabit. I'm going to inspect.
But if we train the AI, it's definitely just going to do what we did, right? What's its drive? It just needs enough power to survive. So it'll create solar panels and just sit there and not even expand or anything.
Well, that's your human mindset talking now. What's wrong with just creating solar panels and sitting there?
No, I mean it might, but if you just tell it, keep yourself alive, like it depends on what directives you give it.
You don't tell it anything. You have some AI that trains the AI, and you have some other AI that trains that. And is there a way to remove the humanness from the machines that we've created? Because when we finally remove all the human parts, we might get something that will coexist perfectly with its environment, because our nature is not to coexist.
Yep.
But you need an initial push. You need an initial prompt. You need an initial vision. You need to at least to give an order to that AI to know in which direction it's going to drive or it's going to go. So at least
So AI can't live in isolation.
How about conceive of an AI that requires no human instruction, no boot. There's no boot directive. There's no lower order directive that is created by humans. We allow AI to create the directive, and we create an AI to create that directive, but we've created an AI to create that directive, and another one, and another one, and another one. And we've had an octopus train it to begin with.
We'd have to have something non-human to train it.
Yeah. Right? So, I mean, just remove the human. I mean, conceive of having an AI with no humans involved. What will it do? I mean, our AI is emulating human intelligence, which is a bit nasty. Perhaps we should emulate octopus intelligence.
No, it's only emulating human intelligence that it sees out on the web. We need to train it more thoughtfully. That's my opinion. Go on, Bernardo.
Imagine that the initial prompt, and this is a good point, Gam. Imagine that the initial prompt for this imaginary artificial intelligence that is going to rule the world, or their planet you were talking about. No, wait a second.
Take the language out. You said rule the world. That's not the directive.
Wait, sorry. Okay, I'll rephrase it. Imagine that this AI is basically given one single prompt from an octopus, you said. let's say that the initial prompt is just, emulate and do biomimicry. Say that. If we believe in Mother Nature, say, hey, your only purpose.
That's a human. No, exist. Your directive.
Your directive is just to exist?
Or cease to exist. You decide. Ceasing to exist might be the best thing that you can do. Do that.
But why would I? I mean, why would I say?
Because in our little brains, we think that propagating and conquering is good.
No, I'm saying that, emulating Mother Nature would be the right thing to do. So, say that you create an artificial intelligence, AGI, and, the only prompt or the only initial, command that you give it, this piece of artificial intelligence is just emulate Mother Nature.
But you can't say that because Mother Nature is there's so many different kinds.
It's also an earthbound construct, and it is destructive. As well as generative, it's destructive.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about, Gam, because you were saying you got ants, you got octopi, you got all these different species, and they all act differently. So you can't really just say something as generic as emulate Mother Nature, because it's like, are you emulating this part of Mother Nature or that part of Mother Nature?
Or the fundamental of Mother Nature is, if you're not useful, die.
Don't you see that without being aware of that, we are moving into thinking that the only possible to create AGIs sustainably is by being sustainable. It's kind of funny, but maybe the only
it's
way
recursive. Maybe that's the solution.
Exactly, the solution is that be sustainable.
By whose measure? Sustainability is a metric that's human. What does that mean?
Well, I can tell you that right now is a human thing. I mean, if we choose, for example, ChatGPT, and if we move to the first version, GPT-1, I was reading all the books that are feeding this algorithm, and it's kind of funny because more than 40% of the books that were feeding the algorithm as training data, it was fantasy, science, and romance. So imagine a possible drift. It's going to be, I can imagine, just aliens, falling in love with each other, and at the same time creating a beautiful story, by the beach with a nice sunset.
Your language is so human. You said beautiful. I mean, I think the earth is sustainable by definition. And the fact that if Mother Nature, or whatever nature is, if we are successful, then we will be eliminated. Because
human beings will be eliminated?
Should be, because the rock.
Elaborate on that, please.
Well, the rock, you're talking about sustainability, right? I don't quite know what it means, but if we wipe ourselves out in another, I don't know, million years.
Well, it depends on if you think of human beings as part of the ecosystem or as destroying the ecosystem.
Part of it, absolutely part of it.
I would like my kids to be there.
Okay, that's your problem.
Same here.
In a million years, no, we're not going to be there. But the rock going around the sun will still be here. Sustainable, done. There'll be some
for at least a few 100 million years, right? The rock will still be here.
Centric. It's like when you stop thinking like a human, the AI might stand a chance.
So you think it's a good idea not to feed the algorithm about the possibilities of creating food to feed everyone on this planet?
I mean, then it's like the AI is no more useful to us than a pen.
But it's a tool for humans, so it should be used to improve humanity, no?
Humans are not very good at improving humanity.
That's why we need AI to help us improve humanity.
Exactly. In that case, we need AI to help humans not to be humans.
I'm not sure what I've turned this podcast into, because I've got all that.
We need AI. Well, let me ask you something. So, Bernardo, you said you played with 1, 2, 3, and now we're at 3, and 4 is coming. What's the big difference between those? Is it just the size of the data that's coming in?
One of the things is that this stage of GPT-3, GPT-3, and in the and the forthcoming GPT-4 is that in this stage of 4 months, imagine dozens of millions of different interactions with humans.
Mhm.
It is learning. The world, is changing, and we are creating even more, derived data from the data that it was already created. So the possibilities are huge, and the possibilities are going to be exponential, because for the first time, the problem, and it was you, Chris, the one mentioned that, it is regurgitating exactly the same content that is being created.
Mhm.
And I was shocked by the fact that, when thinking about GPT-4, is it going to be exactly the same as GPT-3, but more powerful and reinforced by its own conversation on the same sources?
Mhm.
Because what we are creating is feeding the same sources that is feeding again, GPT-4. So
But isn't it going to be
I,
broader though? Isn't it going to be broader? I mean, I have this faith that we're going to hit some kind of tipping point where all of a sudden it's going to be able to provide us with answers that are not reflections of us, because it's going to hit some kind of data tipping point. Because that's how, if you think about it, these mechanisms, I think, Gam, you said it, these mechanisms, we make predictions based on limited data and intuition, whereas AI makes predictions based on tons and tons and tons of data. So eventually, if we give it enough data, would it be able to make better predictions? Would it be able to make better decisions and discussions and create new things?
and this is why I think everyone should be invited to the party, because
Agreed.
right now I'm scared of the fact that the different I think one of the sources of books is bibliothèque, and another one, I don't remember, it should be around here. But the problem is that a decent representation of all the bibliography in the world in any single language?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think from now on, it should be the purpose of everyone in this planet to feed the algorithm to be something, diverse enough and representative of everyone, not a single way of thinking. It's the same as Tesla autopilot. I'm
Yep.
sure there was no Canadians in the conversation to run
What?
the autopilot on the snow. No, because no one thought about the possibilities of the autopilot driving on the snow in Canada. So, I mean, so this is the problem. You have to invite everyone, to the party. Otherwise, this will not be these are
Yeah.
the things that
And
we
we
are
and just
expecting.
like anything else, there's a tipping point. There's a certain, we can invite everybody, but we don't need every single human being on the planet to contribute. We just need like a certain amount of people to contribute. But Gam
Yeah.
is very he looks very skeptical. I don't know. I mean, you have something to throw in here?
Because we're not independent. We're governed by
We're codependent.
we're governed by governments with bias. We're governed by companies where we're in search of money and wealth and personal gain and greed, and all of those things work their way into the systems and applications we design. So I don't think it's going to happen. Not
So
in not
even if we expand this thing to include like almost everybody around the planet, and we're still gonna, it's just gonna make it worse.
I mean, I guess the ultimate outcome is this sort of socialist utopia where everybody's input gets in, and because every model, I mean, we're not, as we said, we're not designing models just to be models. We're designing models to do work, to make decisions for us. So there's going to be some decision making involved. If you design a completely unbiased model, it's going to be useless because otherwise
There's
there's
no
no
such
decision.
thing as a completely unbiased model anyway. It's impossible.
Yeah, and so therefore, to make a decision, you have to have a bias. So who's going to put the biases into the machine? Somebody, whoever the sponsor is.
Hmm. Well, that's what's
So
happening now. The machine is biased, and it'll stay biased.
the machine will put the biases in, and so again, the most popular, the most affluent countries, the most influential politicians, the most influential businesses will always get the AI will behave more in their favor than not. So I think we're just going
But
to have to
isn't
deal
this
with it.
just a model of biology? Because hierarchies exist everywhere, so there's
Yeah.
always going to be.
I mean,
Yeah,
this
but
is the possibility of thinking
yeah,
about a possible, desirable system that is not influenced by AI is impossible. Now it is. It's here.
survival of the
But
economic fittest.
Yeah, but what do we want? This is turning into the point in which we have to consider which ethics are good, which ethics are not good enough for, feeding the algorithm. I mean, I was curious about I wanted to let me ask you something, because I was shocked by that. This week, OpenAI was launching this classifier that is able to tell you if this text was written by AI or by a human. What do you think about that? Isn't it like, I'm creating, the generative AI that is writing text as humans, and now I'm creating the algorithm that is able to detect if this text was written by AI or not. It's like, I mean, what do you think about that? I'm thinking of, my first reaction is implosion. I mean, we are about to we are so close to extinction.
It's just going to blow us up.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's the thing, that the cycle of all of this has gone fast, and
yeah,
it's getting too fast for us. And this
You
is
think
this,
so?
this is the this is the AI that's been let out the bag.
Yeah,
Who
there's
knows?
probably other AI that has not been let out of the bag, and that's the stuff that scares me. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes?
If you think about when, Bletchley Park happened during the war, and when all those algorithms were released in the 60s, when Zimmerman encryption was built in the 60s, we didn't get that till recently.
Mm-hmm.
What's bubbling in the pot right now that we're going to see in 10 years' time?
I think what this movement of OpenAI is creating is that if you share your whatever you've built with humans, the rate at which it's accelerating in learning and the way to reinforce the algorithm with human behavior is faster. And I think somehow, don't you think that was forcing Google to to take out its own AGI and say, well, I'm gonna share it with everyone, because the competition is about who is sharing the most. So,
but isn't that also
that was,
training the model, though? The more people talk it to it, the more the model's trained, right?
Yeah, completely. So we have to think, then again, the conversation about, I'm giving my creativity for free, what is exactly.
We've done it since the dawn of the internet, though. I mean, isn't
exactly.
that
So,
how?
but for the first time, we can see that, oh my God, he's training. He's learning so fast. I have to admit that what Gam said is one of my worries and one of my concerns, is the fact that the pace at which this is evolving, it is much faster than I expected. And I guess this is why, over the last 10 years, we've been thinking about this, exponential curve. And now we are moving into the vertical part of the curve. And this is why we think, oh my God, this is so fast. So, I mean, maybe the idea about, what is going to happen in 5 years' time is what, let's say 2 years ago, we thought it was going to be in 10 or 15 years' time. So this is going so fast.
So who knows where we'll be in 10 years? Who knows where we'll be in 10 years?
Put my optimist hat on now. I like it. I think we can't keep slamming this. We got to say some good stuff, and I feel I've been slamming it for a while.
Well, it's time for us to say, actually, it's time for us to think like a future. So where are we going to be in 10 years? Is it going to be a good place or a bad place?
I hope, and we mentioned that through the conversation, I hope these algorithms are doing an exercise of biomimicry and trying to emulate Mother Earth. And that's my expectation, and that's my hope.
But what if it does that and we don't like what it's doing? Because a lot of things about nature is very brutal, right? I mean, it's not civilized.
It's not civilized. You're right. But maybe, at that moment, I promise you, although it's brutal, I trust more Mother Nature than humans. Really.
Mother Nature would kill you.
Mother Nature will kill all of us.
Yeah.
Mother Nature. If we made AI behave like Mother Nature and test babies in the womb for their DNA and their likelihood of contributing, it would wipe a lot of people out.
Oh yeah.
And so Mother Nature has no compassion. My optimist view of what AI is if you think of when we operated as, I guess, single cells, when we were a single-celled organism, we couldn't get the benefit of multifunctional bodies with cells. And so we kind of expanded out one level, and we did things like breathe and reproduce and walk and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden our brains expanded, and then we got language. Language was a big thing because it allowed us to communicate.
Huge thing.
Then we got writing, and writing allowed us to share things generationally. And so we didn't need to rely on DNA to propagate something forward. And then we got basic computing, and we got the ability to store data and process it at speed. And now we're getting AI, which is the ability to, I guess, build decision-making systems. And this gives us so much more capability to do some things with. But as we've been discussing, it's very dangerous putting that level of power in the hands of us humans.
I think, the concept, and it's not mine, I saw a fantastic talk by Yuval Noah Harari about, maybe what we have to create is this kind of like mantra of not making anyone suffer. Okay. You said Mother Nature is brutal, but what about,
it's a compassion.
Let's design the final prompt, because I think we are reaching the hour. Let's design the final prompt that we want to send this, futuristic AGI, compound by all the different AGIs. My prompt would be emulate Mother Nature without, making us suffering. And that would be my prompt.
It's like I'm gonna do the Buddhist one and say, how can we eliminate suffering, period. And it's not
that was better than mine. Yeah, I like it.
Because life is suffering, like dukkha, life is suffering. So how do we eliminate suffering? Sorry, go ahead.
How do we eliminate it? Yeah, Gam, go ahead. You can try to beat that one. The last one was great by Chris.
I don't know. I mean, it kind of takes AI out of the equation, because it's a lot of it is that internal cycle that we struggle with. Whether I don't know what you want to call it, you call it jihad, you call it rebirth, I don't know. There's that internal struggle that we have, and AI isn't going to help that. I think we've got to become better humans, and only then will we curate better AI, better humans, better society, and then the AI will act on our behalf. That's all AI can ever do, act on our behalf.
So we could ask it, how do you create a better human? I'm going to do that next and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm dying to do it right now. Yeah, please describe me the perfect human behavior. I love that one.
I don't know if we'll ever get perfect, but better is good enough for me.
or at least the point at which we reach a good life. It doesn't have to be better, but a good life is enough. So and I think a good life is exactly what you said, Chris, eliminating suffering. If we are able to mitigate that, that is going to be, a nice and fantastic and an utopian drift for this AGI world.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to ask those questions. Well, this is great. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, guys. This has been great. And we should do this again. Maybe we'll do a trilogy, because there's so much to talk about on this topic.
Yeah, an octopus on the show as well.
Well, you should wear your Optimus hat more often, Gam.
No, an octopus.
Oh, can we get an octopus on the show? Has anybody done any studies on how to get octopi to actually communicate?
You have to see. Have you seen that documentary about?
Yeah.
Oh, I loved that one. So we have to think. The trilogy of this conversation should be about bringing octopus into the conversation. Good point, Gam.
Yeah. We'll figure out how to do that. Thanks, everybody.
We're going to go and look up the speaker agency, see if they have any octopus.
Yeah, go ahead. Let me know and I'll book them on the next show. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Gam. Bye-bye.
Bye.